A massive data leak discovered in Amazon. Let's talk about that one. So every day I go and I check my phone. You can swipe to the one side and it shows you a bunch of information and articles and things like that. And of course, since I'm a technical person and deal a lot with computers and systems and all that kind of stuff, I see this new data breach, which is here: personal and social information of 1.2 billion people discovered in massive data leak. Now I saw this on this is on Data Viper, and they get the details a little bit better than the SiliconANGLE, which is kind of reporting the same thing, because here they're saying it's all Amazon Web Services. Well, it may be hosted in Amazon, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an Amazon breach. Somebody left their back door open, and boom, now you've got a ton of data. So what is this about? This is the Open Elasticsearch server. So since they're saying it's the Open Elasticsearch server, that to me doesn't say it's quite Amazon, because Amazon uses Elasticsearch, but it's a scaled and specific for Amazon. And if you're going to dig right down into it, Amazon uses all kinds of security. Here, using Amazon Elasticsearch, you can achieve network isolation with a VPC, encrypt data at rest, and use in transit using keys to create and control through AWS KMS. And you can use IAM policies. It can be HIPAA compliant, all these things. So there are ways to secure this data. So this isn't necessarily Amazon leaking your data. This is someone having a data cache who didn't do the proper steps to secure their data. So here's what they found. It's data from a company called People Data Labs. It's just a data aggregator. And also there was another company, Oxydata.io, which might have some of their data in there. So, I mean, you can protect your data, but things like this, aggregators that you may have given access to unknowingly to be able to get into your information and help you like connect Facebook and LinkedIn and all these different things together, then that data can end up in here because you don't know who they're selling and giving access to data. So it's very important. Make sure that if you have data in something and you connect it to something, go to your connections like in Facebook and other apps that you've given permission to do things in your, have access to Facebook or Google or whatever. Review those often and keep them disconnected. If it's not a bad idea, just once a year, just go delete them all. And then as you need to use them again, reconnect them. That's kind of what I do. I'm actually maybe getting down to where I'm doing it every 6 months. So, but Elasticsearch. Okay, so what's Elasticsearch? Elasticsearch is this company. They Elastic. They have different things. Elasticsearch and Kibana are two of the products that they sell. It's just a way to search and aggregate data. There's a log system that we might look at using that centralizes log management, and you can search that. But it's just a different type of search engine. I did look up in their documentation, and there is it does have a full way to secure everything, and this may not even be running on. It doesn't necessarily have to be running on AWS. It also works on Google Cloud and Azure. It works on both of those. So this one probably was pointing in Azure or pointing to AWS because that's what they had said. So here in configuring Elasticsearch, you can have ways to connect it to Active Directory file realms, LDAP, all these different things to secure it. So these people who were doing this didn't do it. So hopefully there'll be maybe even some legal penalties against these people. It's as you go through things and set things up, your first concern always should be security and connections and what's open, what can connect, who can connect, when they can connect. So there's a new kind of term, zero trust networks. So zero trust everybody. It doesn't matter if it's your own network. Doesn't matter if you know the network completely. You still set it up with zero trust. You just don't trust it. Put everything in place to secure it. Okay, so in AWS, we can do a few things. Make sure that if you're setting up a database like these, is probably backed on an RDS database instance. So there's some things you can do. Make sure your security group is locked to only the internal network subnet of the computers and systems that you need to have access. Often this number here starts with all 0/0, which is completely open to the world. So go in, edit it, put in the subnet or specific server. If you're using Elastic Beanstalk, it would probably have to be the subnet because your might be dynamically creating servers there. And then also in your RDS instance, make sure publicly accessible is set to no, which would be pretty obvious. To keep people from getting to data. So number one, if you're using Elasticsearch, all of these ways to secure and keep your data safe is documented. It's out there. You can do it. These people didn't. That's why all this data is getting out there. Also, if you're using the Amazon database, make sure you set the public no and set your subnet access and the subnet security group so it's just that subnet. And also you can have it, you'll do encryption and encrypt the data at rest and in transit inside of AWS. You can do all of those things to help. So if you're doing it, if you're someone who's managing this stuff, I'm sure you're already doing it but for some reason these people did not. And you can see here there's all kinds of data records in here. You can see all these well, millions of records in here that someone let be open and free to the public. And probably your data is going to be in there too. So watch things, again, keep track of your own personal information, disconnect everything from, Google and Facebook and Twitter and all those things. I just go and disconnect them all every 6 months, like I said, and keep all that. Because if somebody gets into one, then they might be able to jump into the other and keep going, and we don't need that happening to people. So, because they have phone numbers in here. If they have phone numbers, then they can try and spoof your phone number, get, the text message for confirmation for two-factor to come to you and to them at the same time. So then they'll be able to get into it takes a lot to be able to do that. There are protections that the cell phone companies are trying to put in place, but don't always work. And it might be, a different kind of business number, something like that. You might get more phone calls. You might get, who knows what's going to happen after all of this data is out there and sold. We saw recently that, Disney Plus, it was just days after Disney Plus started that they're being sold, logins are being sold for $3 or $5 online. So watch your data. It's a good idea to watch what you have, what you give access to your accounts like Facebook, Google, Twitter, all these different social things that help you log in, but also can create security vulnerabilities. Anytime I log into something, I tend to not use, a Google or Facebook login. I set up its own specific login and password. So that way it's not the same as Google, it's not the same as Facebook. Then if something happens to one of them, I'm assured that nothing's going to happen to the other. And using LastPass, I use LastPass for most of that stuff. Just kind of makes sense. Okay. So another big data breach, and this Data Viper is a pretty good site that kind of really explains what it is and gives you even examples of what data they have. So if you want to look in and see, what kind of data that they're pulling off of these things, then you can go in and, see. Hopefully this will be up on one of the Have I Been Owned sites and you'll be able to search and see if your data is in there. If I see that, I'll add that to this video later on. But there you go. Another big data breach. They keep happening. How do we solve this? I don't know. Don't go to people who forget to put basic security in place. Very bad. Make sure you got security first. All right. Well, there we go. Thanks for watching this, and like, share, and subscribe. And a lot of your other small channels like this one don't really get the publicity and discoverability on YouTube. So any of your channels that you watch that don't have very many subscribers or are small like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe them. Help them stay, on YouTube, because there may be a day when YouTube decides we don't like you anymore, and we can't do anything about that. So help out all your little YouTube channels. That's always best. All right. Well, thanks for watching this one. Take care.